us and such, that'll work. That'll stop them for a little while. You know, it's kind of like somebody's coming after you with a gun. It's like, oh, I'll throw a phone book at him. Maybe he'll trip over it, and I can keep running. No, I'm not on the defensive here. I love the Lord and his truth. God's a God of truth. There's no darkness in him. So, of course, if this was found in the Talmud, then the rabbis would really try to say, okay, why is this found? Why is this used? How is this used? What's the point? What are they thinking? Give Matthew the same benefit of the doubt that he knew what he was doing, okay? Matthew 27, 9 and 10. Matthew 27, 9 and 10. Well, let's read the account. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people came to the decision to put Jesus to death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us, they replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, it is against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. And then my Bible, the footnote reads, see Zechariah 11, 12, and 13, Jeremiah 19, 1 through 13, Jeremiah 32, 6 through 9. Well, the quote is most clearly coming from Zechariah 11. Most clearly. Zechariah, the 11th chapter, verses 12 and 13. The quote is most clearly coming from there, so why in the world does he cite Jeremiah? I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price at which they priced me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord to the potter. So how in the world can we say that this is quoting Jeremiah? Well, one answer is that in book copies of the day, you might have a scroll that had Jeremiah and, say, the 12 minor prophets in it or something, and you would quote from the name of the more prominent prophet. That's been a common argument that's been used. It's possible, but I don't see any reason to go that way. We know that, for example, Matthew quotes, in the 3rd chapter of his book, he quotes Isaiah and then Malachi, but only refers to Isaiah. Here, though, first glance is he got it wrong. Only problem with that is he was not just writing this one day from memory. This was a meticulous work put together over a number of years. So you have no reason when you're quoting a passage and looking at it and then it's being passed on and repeated and other copies of it being made to just, it's not a mental error kind of thing. Follow what I'm saying? If I'm speaking a mental error and I refer to Ronald Reagan, being president in the 1970s, did I say 1970s? Okay, I'm going to go back and fix that. And when I'm writing, you're going to proofread it and look at it, etc. This is written over a period of years, or after a period of years of Messiah's death and resurrection. So did he just get it wrong? And did most of the scribes also pass it on wrong? Well, there's some ancient manuscript evidence that speaks of Zechariah rather than Jeremiah. But I actually believe that the Jeremiah citation is exactly what he meant to do, to tell us I'm speaking of two things here. I'm speaking of the big picture of what happened with the chief priests and Judas and the innocent blood, and I'm speaking of the specific instance in Zechariah. So therefore, he quotes from the more major of the two, just like when he quotes Isaiah and Malachi, he just quotes Isaiah, as Isaiah said, and then he quotes both of them. So what's his point here? Let me take a minute and just explain a couple of key points. Actually, if you want to find the the reference to it is written in Isaiah the prophet. The best place to look is Mark 1. Matthew 3 cites these verses, Mark 1. This is Isaiah and Malachi being quoted, but Mark 1 says, verse 2, 3, it is written in Isaiah the prophet, and then he cites Isaiah and Malachi. This would be a parallel situation. Listen to some of the rabbinic interpretations of the passage in Zechariah 11. You ready? This is Rashi. They weighed out my hire 30 pieces of silver. Jonathan paraphrases, this Targum Jonathan. And they performed my will with a few men. There were a few good men among them, such as the craftsmen in the centuries, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, Ezekiel. But I do not know how to explain the expression here of 30 pieces of silver exactly, except that kesef is an expression of desire. So instead of silver, it's desire. Our sages, too, explained it this way in the Talmud, etc., etc. The 30 they explained in the following manner. There are 45 righteous men in every generation. This is an explanation of 30 pieces of silver. There are 45 righteous men in every generation. They brought proof from Hosea 3, etc. 15 righteous in Babylon and 30 in Israel, etc. The number 30 is explained by the Midrash that our father Abraham was promised that no generation would have fewer than 30 righteous men, etc. This is Rashi's explanation. The Lord said to me, cast it to the keeper of the treasury. Like ha'otzer, the keeper of the treasury. The Hebrew is yotzer, potter. The rabbinic interpretations say it's like otzer, treasury. But the Hebrew is yotzer, potter. Said the Holy One, blessed be he, to the prophet, write and leave over these and their righteousness to be preserved for the end of 70 years of the Babylonian exile. What in the world is? I mean, this is almost not even commentary. Here's a summary of various rabbinic interpretations by a top Jewish scholar. 30 pieces of silver. This was the standard wage for a shepherd in those days. The 30 pieces allude to the 30 righteous people who are alive in every generation. According to Malbim, the 30 righteous individuals of Zechariah's generation gave their lives to sanctify God's name. In this way, they paid God to continue protecting the Israelites despite their wickedness. Deposit it. God commanded Zechariah to store away the merit of the 30 righteous individuals alluded to in the previous verse until the future when, in that merit, the third temple will be built. You think, with all respect, this is wild. Or God commanded the prophet to have the images of the 30 righteous individuals who died sanctifying God's name engraved on the silver coins. The treasury. The Hebrew word yotzer, which begins with the letter yud and usually means craftsman. However, this is one of the cases where yud is used interchangeably with an aleph, making the word otsar, treasury, or keeper of the treasury. Malbim, however, interprets yotzer to mean craftsman, like a potter. God figuratively commands Zechariah to bring the 30 silver talents to a coin minter for him to engrave the image of the 30 righteous individuals. This is the rabbinic interpretation. The Septuagint doesn't even translate with potter. Matthew literally translates the Hebrew to say that this is given to the potter, hence for the potter's field, just as Zechariah declared it. Matthew takes this passage in the following chapters, which are filled with messianic imagery, finds this betrayal of a shepherd for 30 pieces of silver, says, whoa. And Zechariah, it's for the potter, and then it's actually for a potter's field. If you give it to the potter, it could be for the potter's field. I mean, it's not some big leap in logic here. Matthew says, well, this happened quite literally. And you see how difficult it is for the rabbinic interpreters to make sense out of this. Matthew is 100 times more literal and saying, just as it's written.